particular summit, but only 2 from Africa, one of them President Uhuru Kenyatta. Of course, once again, rubber stamping the very good relationship that Kenya currently is enjoying with China. And by China opening its doors, then it means that there is a possibility for Kenya to now increase the amount of money that they make from exports. We're talking about fresh produce because they're giving very key focus on products like horticulture, like macadamia nuts, like avocado, and business people, about 100, have turned up here in Shanghai to just try and showcase what they have, try and settle in and get those deals that they are seeking with China to be able to do business with them. This will be able to address the disparities and the gross imbalance that is currently being witnessed between the exports that Kenya has vis-a-vis the imports. Remember, if we just take a look at China, from the kind of statistics we have, Kenya, when we look at business between Kenya and China, Kenya receives about 390 billion shillings in terms of goods and services from China. But when we look at the import, it's a paltry 10 billion, meaning there's a gap of 380 billion. And this is what they are seeking to address. President Uhuru Kenyatta was very clear and categorical that business can only be mutual if it is a win-win situation between whichever countries that are doing. And he's asked China to take a look at a raft of measures that they can put in place to ensure that they are not being unfair to the other countries that are doing business with them, Kenya being one of them. I want to now talk to a businessman who's been doing business here in Shanghai for the past 20 years to just get a different perspective on why Shanghai and what this particular forum or expo would mean to other business people. And for China to open its doors, what then does it mean, not just for China, but also these other countries that are seeking to do business with it? My guest at this hour is George Maingi. He's been doing business here for the past 20 years. George, thank you very much for joining us. We're live on KTN News. I mean, being a businessman for all these years and this expo being held here today, what does this mean for you as a businessman?
I will say personally, what I do is in the hospitality businesses. I'm doing bars and restaurants here in Shanghai, and I've been doing it, like you've said, for 20 years. But I will not necessarily say per se that this expo has a direct impact on my business. Probably what I've seen with the influx of the people coming in because of the expo is I've been able to host a couple of Kenyans who came for the expo in one of my locations, which is good for my business and for the reputation that Kenyans also have a place here in Shanghai. I'm happy with that. But I will say, though the expo is not directly affecting or impacting a lot on my business, I would say there are so many challenges that I have faced prior to setting up the business.
We are looking at Kenya now being able to export fresh produce here to China. You own restaurants, like you say, you're in the hospitality industry. This will, in one way or another, affect your business, no?
Well,
what would it mean for you?
I would say, in a way, probably in some ways, maybe a small a fraction, maybe, if we had something from Kenya, I will not mind if it is coming from Kenya. I will not mind buying the product and consuming it in the restaurant, only if it's competitive versus what we have in the market of equivalent value.
Thank you very much. Businessman George Maingi has been in the business hospitality industry for about 20 years now, and he says, of course, this particular expo has bought him business, but having a hotel or restaurant, of course, there's expectation on when Kenya will start to export its fresh produce. Like I mentioned earlier, some of the products that Kenya is vouching to export is the large market now of avocado, of macadamia nuts and horticulture. And remember, a deal was signed just the other day to start a silk farm at an extra processing zone in Eldoret, which will be one of the biggest and is expected to create employment for about 300,000 people. So, of course, here in Shanghai, we'll continue to follow up on this particular expo and just looking at what Kenya is currently showcasing in this expo and what it would mean in the coming months. I will now hand it over back to you, Malika. My name is Akisa from Shanghai.
Thank you very much, Akisa Wandera. They're joining us from Shanghai. Of course, she is there covering the China International Import Expo. Thank you very much. Let's move on now. Sorghum farming in Kakamega could be the next big agricultural opportunity as East Africa Breweries Limited look to open a 15 billion Kenya shilling brewery in the area. Reports suggest that the brewery under the Kenya Brewers Limited is 80% complete and looks to help Kakamega residents by providing numerous opportunities, with sorghum farming being at the forefront. However, of concern is the lag in the opening of the brewery, as it was expected to launch in August.
We want people in the county to grow sorghum, white sorghum, and our message here today is to say we are here to stay, and all contracts will be honored by Kenya Breweries, and we will buy all sorghum in the county as long as you're one of our contracted farmers.
So leo tumekuja kwanza tuhamasishe watu na tuambie kwamba kuna project ya kupanda mtama, na ningependa kuhimiza wakulima wetu wote wachukue project hii very seriously. Umeona tumekuwa na masuala ya mahindi bei yake inarudi chini, wakulima wanaenda hasara. Tumekuwa pia na miwa imekuwa na shida kidogo, lakini this time round tumejifunza funzo ya kwamba tunataka tuwe na direct contact na kampuni ambayo inatulipa. So tumekubaliana pia hakutakuwa na wale brokers.
All right, now the British Broadcasting Corporation BBC are launching their Nairobi offices, which are said to be the biggest outside of the UK. The BBC in Africa is set to launch the bureau together with a studio that will operate within the country. Now the broadcast channel also plans to partner with local media houses to share content. Our reporter Julie Owino has more.
We're here in Nairobi because we're launching our new services for Africa.
So what does this mean for your African platform?
So I think what it means is that we want to really commit to journalism in this part of the world. It's an incredibly important part of the world for the BBC. It always has been. We have always had services targeted at African audiences. But we've had some new investment and we really want to expand our offering here. And it's a really great part of the world to do that. It's got a very young audience, it's got a very vibrant media market, it's got a very relatively free market, lots and lots of media, particularly in Nairobi. And we really want to commit to that and be part of it, and we think that we've got something as well to offer.
So who is really your target audience?
Well, we're going about it by partnering with a lot of media organisations in this part of the world, both in television and in radio and digital, and working with them to really find out what it is that audiences are interested in. And I think that we're launching about 25 television programmes across the whole of Africa and 6 new language services. And we're doing a variety of different products. We're doing news, but we're doing also business. We're doing children's programs, we're doing health programs, lifestyle programs, and working with partners to place those programs and hopefully to enhance the offering that audiences in this part of the world have.
What is your plan for the next 5 years?
Well, to consolidate, to see how it goes, but also to keep moving, because this is a really, media is an incredibly fast-moving industry. And, in this part of the world, digital audiences are still relatively small, but they're growing all the time. And we want to be targeting those audiences, making sure that we're providing services and stories and content that is relevant to them, and making sure that we keep pace with the way that audiences' consumption habits are changing. And they're changing very rapidly, of course, as we know. That we think that we've got the type of content, the type of stories to work with them to be developing things in that space. And I think that, what the BBC's got to offer here is that we're a very trusted brand. We always have been trusted. And that's really, really important in this world at the moment, where we live in a world of disinformation, fake news. And if people don't have access to information that they can really, really trust and rely on, then that's a very significant factor for societies. Societies can't really develop unless people can trust the news, the information that they receive. And I think that that's what we think is an important role that we have to play, not only in this market, but in any market. The job of a journalist, I think, has got much harder than it was when I started out on my career as a journalist. It's always been difficult in some parts of the world. Governments always seek to control the message. And it's important that actually we are on the side of people and that we are not subject to what it is that governments want us to put out solely. It doesn't mean we don't report what governments have to say. What they have to say is important. But we are not actually there to represent their views. We're there to represent the views of the public and also to provide them with the information that they need. But yeah, you're right. I think that the job of a journalist has got much harder. There are threats. There are physical threats to them from not just governments, but organised crime. There are threats to freedom of expression all over the world when people don't want what is being said by journalists and have imprisoned them. We see that, for instance, in places like Turkey, hundreds of publications have been shut down. Hundreds of journalists have been imprisoned. We saw in Saudi Arabia, who actually seemed to have allegedly murdered a journalist. So the problems that journalists face all over the world are not getting any easier. And that is something that we always have to bear in mind and try and keep our people safe as far as we possibly can, but also maintain freedom of expression. That is really important too.
All right, Julia Wiener there talking to Francesca Unsworth of the BBC. She is the BBC News Director. Moving on, Equity Bank has posted an 8% increase in its net profit to 15.8 billion shillings in the third quarter. That ended September. This is from 14.6 billion posted in a similar period last year. The local lender also noted a marginal 1% growth in its total income.
Profit before tax increases from 20.7 billion shillings to 22.4 billion shillings, and after-tax profit increases from 14.6 billion shillings to 15.8 billion shillings. But it has been achieved, as we said, from the earlier slides, in a very turbulent macroeconomic environment in terms of interest rates. It's clear to everybody why we went to the telecom industry through the MVNO, Equitel. Branches have only done 13 million transactions. And suddenly you see agents who are interlinked through Equitel have done 53 million transactions, more than 4 times the number of transactions done by the branches. Equitel doing 353 million transactions, about nearly 300 times more number of transactions.
Well, with the automation of services has come an opportunity for forex traders to trade online. With the first simulated forex trading regulated by the Nairobi Security Exchange has come the opportunity for many to invest in the venture. The new concept on foreign exchange market has so far fetched approximately 80,000 traders and looks to fetch more, including university students who want to trade and invest in forex markets.
Previous year or maybe the past 2 years, people have thought of it as a scam. But now with the regulations, more and more people are starting to get appetite. With EGM being regulated and with this kind of conferences going on, more people are getting to learn about Forex. So the appetite is very high, considering that right now we don't have, people are leaving university, they don't have jobs. So this is standing out as an alternative income method for many people. The biggest age bracket would be from university students to about 40, early 40s, but we still have people who've retired and they still want to learn about Forex. Estimated we have about $350 million out of Kenya by Kenyan investors trading from offshore traders. If this money was being traded here in Kenya and it's being held in Kenyan accounts, then even our currency would do good.
All right, once again, our Twitter poll question there for you. How much money should women spend on hair and makeup a month? Do let us know your thoughts at KTN Kenya, at Malika Kazia with our hashtag KTN Business. All right, speaking of beauty, the billion-shilling beauty industry is one of the fastest growing in the country, having grown by 400% in 4 years, from 26 billion shillings in 2011 to over 100 billion in 2015. We have joining us today Andy Nicole, a lead trainer from Linton's Makeup College, and we've also got with us Victoria Kieti Chesire to talk about the beauty world. She is the marketing manager for Darling Kenya. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. And in fact, as we're having this discussion, we do have a makeup artist and a model who are from the Linton's College of Beauty, and she's going to be showing us some of the looks that are going on. Just behind me, we have our model Gift Cueto and Christine Wanza, our makeup artist. Now, let's get right into this conversation. We've got beauty, we've got makeup, hair, and let's start off with you, Victoria, as to what you've seen as the latest trends when it comes to the hair industry in Kenya.
So the hair industry is very interesting in Kenya, and the Kenyan woman is one of the most, multidimensional women. So what we are seeing is that with every season, there's new styles coming up, and consumer is actually creating styles for herself. She's working with her stylist to create styles for herself. So we are seeing that at least every 1 month, there's about 100 styles, new styles globally coming in. And what the Kenyan consumer is doing is that she's quickly latching on. We remember that I think 2 years ago, consumer used to copy what was happening in the States, but now what's happening, she's actually creating her own Kenyan style.
So it's more individual, it's more independent, and they're bringing in their own flavor to it. Yes. Let me bring you in, Andy. What do you see when it comes to the makeup trends in Kenya right now?
The makeup trends actually have really grown, and we're having a lot of trends coming up. So if you did makeup like 3-4 years ago, is not definitely the same as what we have right now. We have different types of brows, we have different types of makeup applications and lip colors and lip trends. So it's a fast rising industry, and we as the artists need to really keep to trend. So our work is now just starting. Yeah.
Okay, very interesting. But let's get down to the finance bit of it, as we've asked on our Twitter poll today, because there was this study from Afro Urembo Beauty Trends Report 2018, which says the average woman spends 50,000 on hair annually. How accurate is that?
Annually, yes, would actually be accurate.
Okay.
Because they spend say about 3,000 to 5,000 shillings a month. So that would be accurate. In fact, the Kenyan woman changes her style every 2 weeks. So globally, we know the global woman changes her hairstyle, at least twice a year.
Okay.
But the African woman changes her style every 2 weeks.
Okay.
So that is really, something.
What about makeup?
Oh my goodness, that goes to 120, 50,000 on average.
Wow.
Yeah, because some even spend $500,000. Because if you can buy a palette of shadow at 7,000 bob in a month, and you need another one next month. You need mascara at 7,000. By the time December is happening, from January, you have spent more than 200,000 on makeup only.
That is a big amount.
Yeah,
in fact, as we talk about that makeup, let's take a look at how our makeup is progressing with our makeup artist and our model who are doing a simple look for us this afternoon, and we'll be looking at that as we go ahead with our conversation. So basically, makeup is a lot pricier as compared to the hair component of beauty.
Yeah, I can say so, because for hair you only have one. Like, you can just get one hair, right? like let's say in a month. But for makeup, you start with the face. You have to start with skincare first of all. The moisturizer, the primer, the foundation, the powder, the eyeshadow, the mascara.
So in a month,
lips,
an average.
So
figure?
in a month, average, I can say okay for middle class, an average can go up to 15,000.
Okay.
For now the luxurious brands and people of high-end standards, they go even up to 100.
Yeah, I mean, if we talk about
1,000.
brands which are like Estee Lauder and such, of course, you're not going to get a very cheap kind of a range from that to buy in.
Exactly.
But when we get to hair and the longevity of it, for it to last, what are some of the key components that consumers look for when they are purchasing hair?
So, very important. They want the hair to look, as good as when they left the salon, right? So it's very important if it's a curly style, for example, for the curls to maintain, for the curls to be intact, for the 2 weeks that they're going to have the hair on. That's super important. They also need to maintain the sheen. So it should not look faded, after 1 week. It needs to maintain the sheen all through the 2 weeks.
Okay.
They're also looking for, if it's a straight style, they want it to be able to be restylable, right? So they want it to look, yes, straight, but at some point when I feel like today I feel like curls, I need to be able to style it.
So versatility.
So, versatility. So they are, and they also want color, especially this period. This is a season of color. So a lot of, we're going to have kids at home for 2 months, right? And kids are looking to wear more color, more braided styles that are colorful. And we're also going to the beach, we're going to the holiday because there's going to be festivities, Christmas. So we're going to wear more color and bigger curls. So
Okay.
that also follows the trend.
All right.
Yeah.
And when we look at now makeup, Andy, let's talk about when somebody is having to be trained to do their makeup, where we have a lot of makeup artists who start as freelancers or who are starting as Instagram beauty gurus. They want to get to that level where they can get paid for their work, for their art. I believe that Linton's College of Beauty does training.
Yes, at Linton's College of Beauty, that's what we do. We train you to be your own kind of artist, because we have a lot of makeup artists, yes, but we have an individual artist who has their own style and their own art in them. So we trained on, first we train you on the basics, that is application, brows, the skincare. Actually, that's our #1 topic. When you come to the college, that's the first thing. We train you on skincare, because after I apply all your makeup, how will you sleep with it? I need to train you on how to get it off so that you can have healthy skin. So by the time we're done with skincare, and then we go to makeup artistry, now we'll give you the platform for you to be the artist that you are supposed to be. And that's why we go ahead and also absorb some of our students. Actually, Christine and Gift are now employed at Linton's because they were one of the best students we ever had since last year. Yeah.
Fantastic. So Linton's has various stores, I believe, across,
yes.
and you can get a different number of brands. So when it comes to the brands, and it comes to local brands versus international, we've seen a lot of different cases, not too many, but they are emerging, where there are entrepreneurs who start their own beauty line and then sell it to a broader corporation eventually. So what kind of trends have you seen when it comes to locally produced makeup?
What happens with locally brands is they start up, but they don't want to keep with trends. And they should first of all realize that the people who are supposed to give you feedback are makeup artists. These are the people who actually apply the product. They know the consistency, the smell, if it affects the client or not. So they forget to go back to the makeup artist and ask, how was it? How many people out of 10 like the product? So that they can rebrand and do something else. And that's why in Linton's we have brands like Black Opal and Estee Lauder, which always rebrand, always bring new products, because as days go by, we need more products that last. We need products that are hypoallergenic, meaning they won't affect anyone's skin or cause allergic reactions.
Okay.
So as you keep with trends, people are going to buy your products. But if you don't, that's what kills the Kenyan brands.
All right, and as we wrap up, your closing comments on the hair industry in Kenya, where you see it going and from where it is now.
I see the hair industry really growing really fast, because right now we are seeing growth between 6 to 8% annually. And what's happening is that if you're in the hair industry, you need to read the trends right. So I think it's very, similar to what is in the makeup industry.
Yeah.
You really need to understand what is a trend right now, and you need to quickly and very fast capitalize on it, because consumers are going to be looking to stay on trend. And I think what we've done with the rebrand of Darling is that we are giving the consumer what she's looking for in terms of new styles. And we're also telling her that beauty has no definition. So through our Find Your Beautiful campaign, we're saying that you can find your own beautiful through our products.
Fantastic.
So all we're doing is that we make sure we give you on-trend products to be able to find your beautiful.
And what is the highest amount that a woman can pay for a darling hair product?
The highest, actually, we play in the category of quality hair extensions, but affordable, because we want everybody to be able to get something.
Would be
so the highest would be 1,200.
1,200?
Yes.
Really?
And now, sorry, we just launched our semi-human synthetic wigs.
Okay.
And the highest would be 5,500
okay.
on the wigs.
All right. And
yes.
That would definitely last, I'm sure. The longevity is longer for a wig.
Definitely. It's much longer. It's also restylable. You wash it, you condition it, you restyle the way you want it. So it's actually going to the next level where you don't need to have many options. You just need to have a few wigs and you achieve the styles you want.
All right. And finally, Andy Nicole, your last comments when it comes to makeup in Kenya and the growth you see.
Right now, as it's trending and it's on a rise, I can say it came from 0 to 100 really quick. I would really urge artists or upcoming artists to go to a college or a trainer that is professionally trained also and also certified, and also the one that uses brands, various brands at the same time. Because if I train you with one thing, you will use that all the time. But that brand might not be always rebranding and bringing new products. So I'm glad that at Linton's these are very large and a very wide scope when it comes to products. MAC, Estee Lauder, Clinique, you know, Black Opal, Jack and Guido. There's a lot that an artist can use, and then the prices are also favorable. They come from a minimum to a maximum when it comes to luxurious brands. And you as an artist can choose where you're starting up and where you're going.
All right. Thank you so much, Andy Nicole, Victoria, for joining me. And with that, we're going to wrap up this conversation on the beauty industry in Kenya. As you've seen, the prices can vary. How much a woman spends a month can vary. And do keep on taking our Twitter poll at KTN Kenya, at Malika Kazia, and letting us know your thoughts. Well, on that note, we're going to take a short break. Yes, Sevia. Yes? Uh-huh. I can still add hair. Yeah. By the way, there are women like me who buy wigs. Sorry? No, trust me, there are. Sorry, I'm talking to them. Welcome back to Business Today. Moving forward with our next story. In a bid to capitalize on the tourist season, the government is looking to review charter incentives to capture low-cost carriers. The charter incentive program launched in 2016 to help restore the tourism sector through the opening up of air traffic, and it has currently seen over 7,504 arrivals in the market from January to August this year. But the government feels that more can be achieved. Kenya currently hosts over 10 charter airlines since the injection of 1.2 billion Kenya shillings by the government in 2016. All right, now joining us in the studio is Steve Biko, business research analyst, and we're going to be talking about the World Bank report on doing business that came out on the 31st of October, and it was ranking the world's economies, and Kenya did have an improved score. We're going to talk more about this report. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us, Steve. Now,
Pleasure.
you know, we saw that Kenya moved from 80th to 61st position. It was a hike of 19 positions up out of the 190 total countries. A lot of happiness, a lot of joy that came forth from Kenya in terms of that particular hike. But you want to take a look at the nitty-gritties for us. As you say, you want to break it down for us. So the index does measure a lot of different factors, but which ones were key when it came to this year's report?
The index looks at 11 factors, and of these, World Bank looked at 5 of them.
Okay.
One of them is paying taxes, registration of property, access to credit, resolving insolvency, and protecting minority investors. And for me, I think there's a huge problem with the index because it looks at the formal aspect of an economy in a country. out of the 190 countries that were looked at, indeed Kenya did do very well. And I do recall the president actually saying that we need to be happy about it. And it's true that we need to be happy about it. But unfortunately, Kenya is not run by the formal economy. It's run by the informal economy. So we're looking at the World Bank report telling us how the listed companies on the stock market have actually been improving in terms of doing business, which is basically 13% of impact of the economy. So in essence, the report had no consequence at all whatsoever. And in as much as I feel the president's pain in terms of looking for positive news, I would like to remind the public, and especially him, what he told us when he was at Strathmore, that he's let down the SME and the micro SME informal sectors in the country, because this is the sector that actually drives the economy. Because, for example, out of the 11 factors that the index looked at, of these 5, none of them actually applies to the informal sector, because we're looking at paying taxes. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's, according to the law, it's the right of every earning Kenyan to pay the tax so that we can be able to have better services. But one of the biggest hindrances to this, and I was there when the report was being launched by World Bank, and I did raise the question of corruption. And the answer was that the issue of corruption is actually a subjective aspect, which unfortunately the report will not be able to quantify. And for us as a country, this is where the problem is, corruption. And for me, of the 5 issues, for example, the one issue that I'm actually proud of is resolving insolvency, whereby we're able to see the reconstruction of a business through its difficult times, turning from loss to stability to profit, so that investors in this particular business can be able to recover their money, and also the protection of the minority investor. This is actually very critical in terms of the report, and this applies across the board. And in terms of investment, the formal sector drives a lot of opportunities for minority investors to be able to invest in. And this was actually good. But for me, I'm thinking the president needs to push his people in terms of giving more focus on the informal sector.
Okay, so the informal sector needs to be tapped into. You say you don't think it was considered when it came to this report, so it's not very reflective of the entire economic scope of the country. But yes, and President Uhuru Kenyatta did say that we have more than doubled our collection of revenue from company registrations. He did say that, though. And also, when it comes to starting a business, the report did go up in Kenya's rankings by 0.18, which is not much, but it was already in the 80s range, especially given the SME sector. Then what you're saying is that this really needs to be addressed.
For example, let's look at Nairobi County.
Okay.
Nairobi County is actually, people who pay taxes in Nairobi County are less than 200 in terms of land ratepayers and corporate companies. But we see that Nairobi is actually the capital city of this country, so we could get more revenue just from Nairobi alone. In terms of looking at how best to get more revenue, I think if issues of policy enforcement. We have a lot of regulation. We have a lot of regulation to such a point that if all of it were to be enforced at a go, it will be repugnant to any reasonable aspect of doing business. So one, the president and his team, what they need to do is be able to streamline all the regulation around it. We have too much of a regulation which is stifling growth, which is making it very difficult for people to invest in this country. We are seeing a lot of companies actually relocating to Rwanda. We've lost a lot of business to Rwanda and Ethiopia. Let me put it in perspective. Rwanda is smaller than Bungoma County, but it's doing almost $1 trillion shillings in terms of business. Now imagine if every county in the country was as efficient as Rwanda. We'll be very far. So in terms of the report, it's good because it helps us to start a conversation in terms of being able to measure the impact of the policies and regulations of these administrations on the economy, and we can be able to map out and see exactly how we are faring on and how we are doing. And for me, the report only covers 13% of the overall aspect of the economy, because 77% of the economy is run by the informal sector. And for me, more issues need to be looked at. One, we need to look at the issues of policy formulation, because I don't think the people in charge are actually thinking. We're only thinking about clamping down or banning things because we're not able to regulate things. That is one. Two, issue of energy. It's very expensive. When you look at the energy usage in the country, Nairobi uses almost 60% of the energy produced by Kenya Power and KenGen. So it means the other 46 counties are using less than 1%. So in terms of growth, we cannot really be able to talk about anything.
But when you, let me just interrupt you. When you talk about energy, I think he's already taken a certain measure where he directed the Energy Regulation Commission to bring down their rates, which they did from 12 to 10 shillings per kilowatt, especially when it comes to SMEs and small households that only consume less than or equivalent to 100 kilowatts.
Now, my question is, how do you map SMEs? Because you cannot put an SME and a small household in the same bracket. And this is not the first time the President has actually directed the Minister of Energy to reduce tariffs. This is, I think, his 7th directive since he took power. So you see, what we need is streamlining policy enforcement, streamlining regulations across board, ensuring that we have access to, we have ease of access to credit. Only listed companies on the stock market have access to credit. The rest of the SMEs and the micro sectors and the informal sector have no access to credit, especially since the interest cap was actually passed the law. It's been very difficult to access credit. And this has given rise to mushrooming mobile loan platforms, which are very expensive when you're able to look at the interest rate. So for me, I'm proud of the report because it's enabled us to start the conversation. But when you're able to dig deep into it, there are a lot of things that need to be looked at. And as I've said, policy formulation, regulation, focusing more on the informal sector, and the President actually is being very vocal because we need to see reduction of energy costs. We need to see at least a couple of counties doing 24-hour businesses. And KQ has done very well in terms of the New York flight.
Yes.
But for it to be beneficial, we need to export.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So those are the key things that you think still need to be addressed when it comes to bettering the economy, bettering our position to enable us to allow businesses to do better and to set up.
Yes.
All right, fine. Thank you so much, Steve Biko, for joining us today.
My pleasure.
All right, that was Steve Biko, business research analyst, talking about the World Bank's report from last week about doing business and pretty much using a lot of strong critiquing to bring forth the issues when it came to that report and what we should focus on as a country. But let's move on to our next story. The number of single malt Scotch consumers is increasing gradually in the Kenyan market, thus fueling competition